Room M from the villa of P. Fannius Sinister is an impressively well-preserved example of second-style Roman fresco painting. The villa was located about a mile north of Pompeii, in a region known for its many aristocratic country homes. The tradition of having a villa rustica or luxurious farmhouse there was one that continued into the time of the Bourbon kings, which explains the name Boscoreale, or royal forest. We have some information on the construction of the villa. It was built by Mario Structor as a country escape for a city dweller. This again ties into the idea of the domos versus the villa and the different types of Roman homes and their uses. The villa itself featured 30 rooms grouped around a peristyle. It had 3 floors and included underground passages, baths, and stables. Many of these rooms had elaborate frescoes that were preserved for around 2,000 years, from 80 to 30 BCE until they were excavated in the 20th century. So, how are these frescoes so well preserved? As we know from class, in the year 79 CE, Mount Vesuvius erupted, obliterating several Roman cities, including Pompeii, Herculaneum, Stebea, and smaller regions like Boscoreale. Much of the region was buried under layers of ash. The ash sealed the frescoes and kept them from being exposed to the elements until the villa was then rediscovered in the year 1900 by Vincenzo de Prisco on the property of Francesco Vanna. It received its name from an inscribed bronze vessel found in room 24 near the wine press that read Publius Fannius Sinister. It, however, had one more possible owner, Lucius Uranius Florus, whose seal was also discovered near the villa's baths. After the initial excavation, the villa's frescoes were auctioned off to museums around the world. Today they can be found in Naples, Brussels, Paris, and most notably the Metropolitan Museum of Art. In 2002 and 2007, the Met actually embarked on a mission of conservation, repainting portions of the fresco using the trateggio technique, where colors were matched but painted in vertical, short brushstrokes to distinguish between ancient and modern. The original frescoes were executed in buon fresco, or true fresco technique, where paint was applied directly to wet plaster, allowing it to deeply penetrate and become one with the wall. This technique is also what allowed for the frescoes to survive thousands of years. Okay, so today I'm going to be speaking specifically about the Cubiculum, or Room M, and its frescoes. The Cubiculum functioned as a bedroom and was among the most private rooms of the residence. Its frescoes were done in the second style, meaning they featured illusionistic architecture and sought to expand the space beyond the wall. The room is comprised of 3 walls, 2 symmetrical side walls, and a central wall with a window. There are painted Corinthian pilasters in each of the 4 corners of the room that support a painted architrave. Beyond these are illusionistic landscapes that fall into 3 categories: cityscape, temple, and shrine. Please note that the 2 side walls mirror one another and are very similar, but still have a few slight differences we'll cover later. Okay, so let's begin with the cityscapes. These cityscapes are made out of buildings that are receding into the background. They're all different heights and have projecting terraces, but what really makes them unique is their use of multi-point linear perspective. Now, there's this misconception that linear perspective was invented in the Renaissance. And to quote Professor Hopkins, lies, lies. This is an example of Roman linear perspective, which basically means the artist created the illusion of depth using receding lines or orthogonals that converged at multiple points. Now, this is a bit different from Renaissance single-point linear perspective, but still it disproves this misconception that linear perspective was invented in the Renaissance. So another important detail that I want to draw you guys' attention to are these doors at the bottom. First of all, please note that these painted friezes at the top of the doorway are incredibly detailed. They are perfect examples of the level of detail and thought that went into the fresco. There are also these other minute details like bucrania or bull skulls that are hanging from garlands that may indicate a religious element, but also just prove how closely the painter was following real life. These probably would have been realistically hung on Roman architecture in the city, so again, it's proof of the level of detail demonstrated in the frescoes. Another reason, just going back to the doorways, that these are significant is that they seem to serve an actual purpose. It's almost like the artist or artists wanted to give the viewer an entry point into the scene. This makes sense considering the fresco is second style. So let's move on to the sacred shrine scene. It is located between the cityscape scenes and is separated by 2 red columns. These red columns are casting a shadow, which adds to the naturalism of the fresco, sort of drawing the viewer in and extending the imaginary realm into the physical space. The shrine itself is made of 2 Ionic columns supporting an entablature. This is where you see little differences between the left and the right walls. On the left, there is a golden statue holding a torch, and on the right, there is a statue holding a patera, which is basically a bowl used in a religious context. Around both shrines, there is greenery, which again adds to the sense of bringing the outside in. There are also these decorative objects like vases. Finally, let's move on to the temple scene, which was most likely positioned above the bed. So, what are we seeing? There is a propylon, or a monumental entryway with columns. Behind it is a thalos, or this round colonnaded temple, which kind of sort of looks like the one at Boarium that we studied. Its columns are receding into the background, again adding this illusionistic quality. So these are the scenes of the side walls. Finally, let's talk about the rear wall fresco. It uses a lot of the same illusionistic techniques, but in content, it's very much different. So what are we seeing? It's a rustic scene of an arbor atop a rocky cliff. Below it is a cave, a man-made fountain, and a statue of Hecate. This was a popular grotto form that was typically attached to villas. In my opinion, this was the artist's way of further bringing the outside in by basically mimicking scenes that the viewers might have seen around the property. So on one hand, there's this fantastical element with the architecture and the impressive shrines, but on the other, there's this effort to draw the real outside world into space. The final thing that I kind of want to draw you guys' attention to is the hypothesis that the frescoes in the Cubiculum were quotations of theatrical backdrops. Certain scholars trace this highly detailed illusionistic fresco type to skenographia, which is basically Hellenistic scent painting. To conclude, these are the major key facts that you should take away. The frescoes were found in a cubiculum, or a bedroom, in a villa rustica built around 50 BCE in the Boscoreale region. They were buried after the eruption of Mount Vesuvius, and they were done in second style in buon fresco, or true fresco technique. They are currently in the Met, and they are notable for their use of linear perspective and architectural elements.